Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
A very good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to this new edition of the Predictive AI World. We are gathered here today to discuss a very intriguing topic. But before that, quick introductions. My name is Malay Upadhyay. I'm the CMO at SalesChoice, a predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics machine learning SaaS company. We are here to discuss curiosity as a very foundational aspect of innovation. But if you would visit saleschoice.com, you will find podcasts, webinars, videos on a host of topics that actually aim to improve productivity of not just sales and marketing professionals, who we often tend to focus on, but the organization as a whole, in some cases, even you individually. Our host today would be Dr. Cindy Gordon, the CEO and founder of SalesChoice, and Dr. Diane Hamilton, who is the president and founder of Tonera. She is also, in addition to her coaching and consulting capacities, the host of a nationally syndicated radio program where she interviews a whole host of experts in the industry in her podcast. In addition to that, through her MBA program, as it says over here, she has been at the Forbes School of Business and also at several other universities, and is a certified Myers-Briggs and EQI instructor. I've always loved those. So to start off with the agenda, I would like to turn things over to Dr. Cindy Gordon and then to Dr. Dan to introduce themselves, following which we will begin with the discussions. And as we proceed, you will have time to submit your questions, which we will try to answer to the best of our ability as well. And here's to an hour of learning and fostering curiosity within each one of us.
Thanks, Malay, and welcome, Diane, and to all of you out there. Just to let you know, we're in Toronto today, and it's minus 22. We're just talking that was minus 32 last night. So I hope you're all nice and cozy warm. I know Diane's in Scottsdale and was just saying how balmy it is. So welcome, everybody. So in terms of today, I'm just going to stage set a few comments before turning it over to Diane. And if you read the abstract, for those of you that are online, we're really quite concerned about employee engagement and how really to drive more inspiration, more motivation, really ensure that our employees aren't the walking dead. I've been pretty steeped in innovation, capacity, and resilience for some time, and very concerned in terms of how do we bring the full brain to work to increase employee productivity, but also very concerned about the declining cognitive skills and critical thinking skills as we all live in this fast age of distraction. So in terms of the process here, Diane's going to spend some time introducing her incredible research on curiosity and how it can lead to innovation, but more importantly, what are all the attributions under there. The second area, we'll start to discuss a little bit more on some of the cognitive skills of sales professionals in particular. And as we promised, we stepped back and came up with some of the skills in terms of what we think are the new skills, a bit on the art side, a bit on the science side, as we continue to build enablement in our organizations. So with no further ado, welcome, Diane. It's always a pleasure to have a time and a conversation with you. And I know our guests are all excited to hear about your research.
Well, thank you, Cindy and Malay. It's fun to do this on this end of the interview, because I'm used to interviewing you and some of the other really innovative minds out there. But this is something that has been very interesting to me. I've been working on curiosity research for years now. I've been doing my radio show and teaching and doing all my other things on the side, sort of, because this has taken up so much of my attention. And they all kind of play together. I guess I'd like to start with just giving you a little bit of background of what led to my interest in this and what we're going to talk about in terms of curiosity, because it's such a commonly used term. But basically, curiosity, there's two types, basically, trait and state curiosity. And we're talking about the more internal curiosity, which is, it can be diversive, which is if you're motivated by boredom, you get distracted and you're not as productive. And we're not really going to go in that direction. We're talking about really specific, knowledge-oriented, goal-oriented, problem-focused, and all the things that lead to innovation, and some of the things that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But I want to tell you what led to the interest of even researching this. I've taught more than 1,000, it's probably in the thousands now, of business courses, and you have such a different level of students. If everything from the undergrad through the doctoral students, you could see a difference in their levels of curiosity of the ones who were really successful. And then as I started interviewing so many people on the radio, so many people who were billionaires and Forbes 30 under 30s or Time Magazine's most influential people, you started to see this difference in just what their drive and their success level was. And so I started to ask them about that quite a bit, and we kept coming back to the same thing, that they were just endlessly curious. And I didn't see as much of that with a lot of my students. The ones that were not curious, they would be more apt to want me to give them the fish than to teach them how to fish. They wanted you to do things for them. And I found that kind of frustrating. I wanted to help them become more curious, which led to my interest in writing my book about curiosity. But beyond the book, I didn't want to create something that was just explanation of what curiosity is, because there are assessments out there that tell you if you're curious or if not curious, and I didn't want to do that. What I wanted to do was determine the things that kept people from being curious. If you could find those things, then you can work on this issue. So if you could just go to the next slide, if you wouldn't mind. I think it's really important to look at curiosity as the spark that ignites everything else. If you look at the slide, you see that curiosity will lead to motivation and drive, which is really what's behind a lot of the communication, decision-making, conflict, all these issues. I mean, you talk to any leader out there, so they're going to give you many of these as the problems they deal with. I mean, everybody's worried about soft skills and engagement issues and millennial boomer interactions, and anything you hear about out there, a lot of it just, everything I researched from emotional intelligence and others issues all kept coming back to if you could develop curiosity, you could get that spark to get the motivation. And I think everybody right now is wanting to be more innovative. You know, everybody's worried about artificial intelligence replacing jobs, and how are we going to be innovative? How are we going to be competitive? Because if you're innovative, then you're productive. But if you don't start with having people who are well aligned to what they really should be doing and what they could be best at, that's a big mistake. And now we're going to have a lot of jobs that won't be here, and people are going to have to do something else that they hadn't considered doing, and maybe they weren't really well aligned to begin with, and they could be put into a job that's a better fit to begin with as it is. But a lot of people have hesitation when it comes to offering ideas and suggestions. And so that's where my research came in. And if you could go to the next slide, basically what I did was I started out with asking a lot of the billionaires and geniuses and, you know, everybody on my show who I've interviewed. I mean, I've had everybody from Daniel Goleman, who's made emotional intelligence successful, to Steve Forbes, to, you know, you name it, they've been on my show. And I started asking them a lot of questions about curiosity. And then I went to LinkedIn and I went to all the different leaders and people with whom I've worked, and kept asking questions. What keeps you from being curious? And then as I started to align all these answers I got, I started to find that there were really 4 basic areas that were holding people back, and they're fear, assumptions, technology, and environment. So you could see that's the acronym of FATE to help you memorize that or remember it easier. But I assumed that the fear would be so much more than anything else. But what was interesting to me in all the years of research, that there is quite a almost even disbursement in all of these areas. The fear has, I mean, that's pretty easy to relate to. You realize that maybe you don't want to look stupid by asking a question, or you're afraid if you pose a solution, you won't look like you're completely prepared with all the other alternatives that they may come back with. And so a lot of people hold back in meetings. They may be hesitant for a lot of reasons. So under each of these 4 factors, I looked at 9 separate sub-factors. So if they take this curiosity code index that I created, they would answer 36 questions. And I got very interesting information back from this, because the other assessments that were out there were only measuring if people were curious or not. This is giving you what is wrong, what's stopping me, how can I get better so I can create an action plan. And so that was what this was intended to do. Just want to give you a little background on what, now we mentioned fear, but the assumptions that's really the voice in your mind that's saying, I'm not going to be interested in that, that sounds boring. It's that little voice we have that has been influenced sometimes by environment, sometimes by fear. Some of these things do overlap a little bit, but we did a lot of factor analysis, got the peer review research is due to be published on this probably in the next few weeks. And so there's a lot of research behind this to get these factors. And then if you look at technology, a lot of people are very concerned about trying to figure it out. It's too overwhelming. They don't have enough time, or it does it for them. Why should they even understand the basics? So they have this thought process when it comes to technology that can really hinder where they can go with their career. And then environment, of course, could go all the way back to your parents, your teachers, your siblings, your friends, your coworkers, your boss, your current boss, your past boss. I mean, there's so many people in your environment that's a huge influencer. And I've had people ask me when I've been on interviews, and actually I was in an interview yesterday, asked me about environment. And for me, I had a family that was very much into sports and certain specific activities. And if you weren't into those specific activities, everything else was just looked down on. And so if you've been raised in that setting and you have these dormant interests, but nobody's really pulling them out of you, I think that's what I was trying to get at with a lot of individuals with this assessment. So that's what I've been working on. I mean, it's a really fascinating area. I think what we're doing with the training is making sure that leaders are getting answers to what they can do to make their workforce be more, better aligned, more curious, so that it's leading to innovation and productivity. And it's not just, oh, I am a ESTJ or I'm a DISC D or whatever it is, and then not following up with anything that's productive. So that was what my intention was with this research, was to give leaders and individuals a way to really make an impact on their curiosity and be better aligned and better engaged at work.
Diane, it's really, I've been listening pretty intently, as I'm sure all of our audience has. In terms of, particularly we were talking about the assumptions, right, and the stories in our heads, and obviously a lot of psychology research is there, and how important it is to put that voice in perspective, and in some ways learn how to calm your mind so that you can really see other patterns. Did you get into any of the aspects in your research in terms of the importance of starting this process and getting the leadership behaviors aligned? I know we've got some other questions coming in, but just any comments there on alignment from the top?
Well, any cultural change in an organization has to start at the top. And so if leaders don't buy into the need of how important this is, it's going to be just like any other thing that you do. You'll go through a training session and you'll be done with it, and then that's not going to be helpful. You really have to have buy-in from the top to realize that quote Marshall Goldsmith, what got you here is not going to get you there. And if I've seen a lot of leaders who had really big success in the past with whatever it is that worked for them, and it was great for whatever the market was at that time. Maybe it was a different supply and demand situation. Maybe it worked in that situation, but no longer works because things have changed. The really progressive, forward-thinking leader who's proactive to what's going to happen here with all this technology change is thinking, what can I do to make sure my employees are aligned? We already know we have less than a quarter of really engaged employees. It's costing hundreds of billions a year. Are we going to keep just bleeding this money that with all these employees who really could be saved or salvaged within the company? And all we have to do is open this dialogue and find out more about them, what they would really like to be doing, what they could be good at, and maybe they're in the wrong position. I've had people on my show who hire people without a job description in mind because they know that they're going to be good at something, but then they devise a job around what they think they're capable of doing. And I think that's just a newer, more progressive approach. I mean, not everybody can afford to do that, but I think that leaders are really going to have to change the way they've led in the past. And part of this is, we all know that drive's important, but I've never seen such excitement over the need for curiosity as I've seen it in the last couple of years, just because we knew this was coming and everybody knows they need to be proactive.
Thanks, Diane. That's